The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the producer and not necessarily those of WKTV Community Media.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Grand Rapids Ghost Hunters podcast. My name is Brandon Jose, joined today by my co-host Tanya.
Hello, it's Tanya Geyer-Sager coming from Reynoldsburg, Ohio.
And today's special guest is Danny Holroyd from Southern Michigan Paranormals.
Hello, everybody. How you doing?
Danny, if you just want to give some like kind of your background in the paranormal field, like how you got into it and like along those lines.
Yeah. So loosely, I say loosely because I argue with my old VP. 2008, 2009, we became the Southern Michigan Paranormals. But before that, I was operating very early on, very close to 2006 to that time as the Paranormals, because my partner investigator, we were anything but normal. And we thought it was funny to call ourselves the pair of normals. And we kind of played on that. But the group has, loosely been around since then. To date, we just did another Henderson Castle tour, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about that in the program. But it was remarkable that we've done 302 investigations since 2008, 2009, which blows me away still. I know I remember people back in the day saying that's impossible, the numbers are impossible, but I had to tell them early on that my group, when we got going, wanted stuff every Friday, every Saturday night, sometimes, Saturday going into Sunday. Then we would pick up stuff in the day because, we were taking private cases too that would have to be in the middle of the week. And with a few of us, even though we were all working, jobs, we would take the time off or trade out shifts. And I could do that in corporate security. I could trade out shifts. And then, so it did, after a while, I will tell you that my wife had a sit down talk with me, a very serious talk, that she supports me 100% in this, but she's like, hey, Dan, love you, but it'd be cool that you see the kids before they graduate from college. And, it does affect people's relationships and their marriages. I don't think that's talked about enough, but I guess I'll mention it. But she was right. I had to find a balance. And after about a year or two, I pulled that back and said, listen, I am obsessed by this because, Brandon, and Tanya, it's happened to me since I've been a small kid. And I mean, very young. And, but when I got older, it happened more and more. And then I pursued it. And, I know you guys, it starts out as like a hobby that you're really interested in, and it turns into a very deep obsession. And it can get a hold of you quick if you don't maintain that balance. And so that's, I guess, a quick synopsis of me. I'm a little sensitive. I allow it to happen when it happens. I've had scores of, adventures, but I want to tell you that this is a big part of my life and who I am, and I love doing it. And you and I have mutual people we know, out here in the field in Michigan and beyond. And I guess that's it. I think that's the shortest I think I've ever really put it to somebody. But I've got a great team, and people have come and gone from this team. It's never been the Dan show. I'm just like the front guy, the guy who put it together. But I've had people leave, and I have a couple people who are still with me. But I will say they've all done amazing work. I'm happy now. I've got an engineer scientist on the squad, and he's began building some of our devices, and it's really cool. And I put a mix in our group. We set out to debunk first before we just start claiming everything is, spirit or ghosts. And I'm still a believer, but I'm a healthy skeptic. I think a lot of people should operate that way, and we continue to operate on that level. I put every religion thought and belief into it, apparently against the client's idea or wishes, obviously, but as a whole. And I take all that stuff and I put it in the bowl and make a soup, and then I try to come up with the best educated guess sometime, because I will tell you right off the bat, what I know about paranormal is nothing. I think a lot of us know nothing, and we're just grabbing at straws, and we're trying to give folks the best guess, that we can, if they see we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So, wow, that was a lot of talk, and I apologize, but there's my answer.
No, that's perfectly fine. That's what we got you on here for is
I
yeah,
just-
so
I'm sorry.
go ahead, Tanya.
I find it fascinating that you admit to that bit of sensitive side. A lot of paranormal investigators that I've talked to, that's not the first thing they'll say. They usually don't want to admit they're sensitive because they want to be a little bit skeptic.
Right. And I didn't at first. You're right. That's a good observation. I didn't at first because I knew that would probably fit, even if I say it to people now who are aware of me, they're, some of them who don't know me, you're right. I get the rolling of the eyes like, oh, here we go, because there's a lot of people in groups who they say that. And I know all four of us here know that some people think they have it, but we know they probably don't. And it's not to besmirch anybody. I'm just saying, and there's people who know they don't, and they figured they'll get more attention by saying that type of thing. So I thank you for that observation. I kept it secret for a while, and I just can't anymore because there's things that happened to me on the tour in front of crowds of people, and they find it a little strange, but I find it kind of normal for me now, I guess, at this point.
I know the feeling. I've been psychic myself. I know the feeling.
Right.
It's interesting to have those experience in it and you embrace into that paranormal field. I'm the same way. I like to go into an investigation being a skeptic a bit because there's situations they'll say or things that'll happen that my first instincts are, what are the logical explanations first?
Yeah.
And
And I bet you're feeling it. I'm sorry.
paranormal. Sorry.
No, I wanted to let you finish. I have a habit of interrupting. I apologize.
I was just saying, with your investigations, have you found there's more logical explanations than the paranormal?
There's a balance. I know it looks like I'm frozen up. Yeah, there's a balance. There really is. I couldn't give you like a percentage against a percentage, but yeah, you're right. There are quite a few that they want to hear. I'm trying to put it in good terms. They are going to hear what they want to hear sometimes with some of the cases, which is why we don't do too many personal cases anymore. I joked around on the radio here one year on WRKR with my friend Mike McKelly, and he used this all year as a soundbite. I mean, even into spring and summer, that I would go into the house and I would turn into the paranormal social worker because that also had an effect on what was going on sometimes. But, even being sensitive as you are, there's times too, sometimes I'm fooled, but I can also sometimes pick up that I'm not getting the whole story. I don't think that some things are as they say they are. And if I struggle tonight, everybody out in the audience, I had brain surgery in December and I'm still having weird stuff with it. So forgive me if I stutter a little bit. It'll come through, I promise. But that's where I'm at. And I just try, like you said, I just try to do my best to common sense it first before we just start jumping, and I had a talk today. You must have been reading my mind from, where you're living, because I had a gentleman walk up to my Jeep today. I went in the Jeep dealership with my son just to look at the new Jeeps. I got a Jeep Commander. It's an Ectomobile. That's a whole nother story. But the thing is, the gentleman approached me and then he's like, well, my house is haunted, and I prayed to Jesus and I'm into Jesus. And he wasn't over the top, but I thought instantly right there. And I know you've dealt with this too. I had to say, well, let me just take you back a bit. We got to put it in neutral ground and we have to operate in neutral area before we start going on your belief system or what you've been taught or what I've been taught. Because if we do that, we're committing a disservice to investigate about what you really have. But he then said to me, he goes, well, I've never had anything attack me, bite me, or do anything bad. It's just that I see some stuff. And, I'll ask you, you look for that. You look for certain verbiage and signs too, if it was really terrible or bad, which he didn't say any of that. So I just thought, well, we'll come in and we'll let you know.
My question I usually ask them in that kind of thing is, does it scare you?
It didn't scare him. I asked that too. So yeah, you're reading my mind. This is great. I like this interview. So I did, and I told him why, and he said, yeah, come on out. And I said, well, now look, I'm not going to come there one night because he already told me a group had been there, and I know who these people are. They're from way over in the east side of Michigan. I'm not going to mention the city. It sounds like right? We'll just say that. So basically, I told him I'd have to come there maybe 3 or 4 different times, and we'll set a 4-hour minimum each time to be very unobtrusive to you and your family. And we'll sit down first, have a talk. Where are you at? I have a lot more things that I ask. I actually go through almost an interrogation project we take on any private case, because I've asked things 3 or 4 different ways, not intentionally to trip anybody up or see if they're lying, but it will give me a basis, you know what I mean, to correlate some sort of different structure in there if they're not telling me the same thing asked differently. And then I have to work back from that. And if there's times through that process that I'm not sure, there's times I've said, well, I don't think we're the right group, and here's another group, or there's a listing of groups out there. And I think they want somebody to come in and tell them what they want to hear. And then other times, as I said earlier, I go in and I ask, and I've got a nurse on my team. She goes with me to all these. And if I see tons of medication, we write them down and we know what they are. And if there's psychotropic drugs and different things because you're schizophrenic and things of that nature, I'm not going to turn you down. I don't want to ever be that guy that maybe they have something happen and now it's worse, because not only are they schizophrenic, now they got Aunt Meg running around through the house. So I just try to back up on that too. So I'm always, in answer to slightly what you said, I'm just always looking for a common sense balance to everything first. And then what I'm left with, I'm amazed. And I got to tell you, I've been amazed by some things. Yeah, for sure.
I've been in those situations. I mean, I go in not knowing on
Right.
because I don't want to know what's going on. And I let the environment tell me, because then when I come back and ask the questions and they don't seem to, sometimes I've had it where they completely match the energy that's being told to me. And then I've had other times where it's like, these 2 stories aren't making sense. Like
Right.
that telling me the house energy or the energy that we're in is telling me one story, but they're telling me something completely different. And it's like I said, I've experienced where I agree with you. You go in and they want you to tell them something they want to hear.
Yep.
And that's like, I looked at that one. I've worked at people before and go, that's not how I work. And you're going to have to find yourself another team or another person, because I don't work that way.
Yeah. I came across that recently. I have a friend, she's been sick on and off for a while, and I've known, Christy for quite a long time. I probably shouldn't say her name, but I won't say the name of her group. But she went in and the same thing, and because she told them the truth and it wasn't what they wanted to hear, it just turned into a thing. And she asked if I would like to go over and take a look, and some people that I discussed off air, I guess, got involved, and I'm out. I wash my hands, because you're right. There are people who just insist that you tell them they got demons and evil things running around their house. And I wouldn't know because I haven't been there, but I would almost suspect they probably don't. And I don't know what some people get out of that. Tanya, if I have you on my show, I would ask you that question. Like, they tell you stories and then you're like, what are you getting out of this? Do you think you're going to be on YouTube, or I don't know. What are you looking for? You know what I mean? Some attention? I don't get it.
That's where I think it is a lot of times they think it's a special kind of attention.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And they want you to validate that. And I learned a long time ago, that's not the type of attention I want, especially negative. I mean, have you dealt with any negative entities or negative spirits since you've been investigating?
I have. Yeah. I mean, my first personal case was in Saugatuck, Michigan. And I can give you, pretty good description without sharing too many, without sharing names. The individual has since moved out of the state, but his dad is a professional there in town, a dentist. And I met this person because I've been doing podcasts since about 2008 on Blog Talk. I started out, so if everybody knows that, that's old school, man. And then we went to live stream, and then in between we ended up on People's TV Network, which is the first internet TV thing that was going on. But that's here nor there, so it's not really it's not important to the story. Again, I'm drifting. I apologize, everybody. So we went in there because this person told me that when he would come to the show, he had things going on. He wasn't sure. First, there's a vortex in his bedroom and something screaming at him, keeping him up in the middle of the night. And I was interested. And the person that I had with me, he kind of backed out on me, left me hanging. So my wife went with me. And when we were in the door, I met him and two of his friends. And the first thing they said to us was that my wife must have been a witch in her past life, which we found interesting, which I believe she was. I mean, she's 100% Irish as they come, like 100%. And I could tell you stories. So that I piqued my interest. There's other stuff that's attached to the house. And there's an apartment in the back of this bungalow, which was built in 1927. I found that all that out afterwards, but he brought up the fact that the apartment behind him was left as it was, and this was probably 10 years prior to me coming in, that a young man had been renting that, and he went out one night and he disappeared and has never been seen since. Still an open case. And during that investigation, I felt, like you probably would, I felt something was odd in the house, like it was off. And what it came down to is when I started seeing things in my head, because that's how I get quick images. And I thought I saw a woman who seemed like she was waiting for somebody to come back from World War II, because Saugatuck was used when they had small carriers in the Great Lakes to train these pilots. She had fallen in love with somebody. He never came back. She was hanging out there sad. She then quickly disappeared. Then I came across an older man who kept shouting at me, not shouting at me, was insistent. He was cold. He was very cold and he needed a blanket. And then this dark, all I can describe it, maybe Tanya, tell me if you've been through this. It was like a dark mass. I saw a dark mass. It's almost like a cloud, but it doesn't have that feel to it. And it came in and both of them stopped talking to me. And it kind of sat there in my mind for a second. And then I asked it to move on and let them speak. And this sounds really fantastical, I know, but this is what I picked up. Okay. And I only shared it with my wife. I whisper, because it then moved on, and then I still felt they were there, but it felt a little more clear. So as the night went on, I slept in Steve's bed. Oh, I gave his name out. I won't say his last name, I promise. So I slept in his bed and nothing screamed at me, but I did have some weird activity, because next morning we tried hooking up one of my cameras, and you're all going to love this. I was old school when we started. So this was before we started SMP. So 2006. And I had a JVC camera, everybody. Ready? Y'all know what a VHS recorder is? Anybody in the room?
Oh,
That's
I can't remember.
Yeah. So that's what I had. So, and we turned it on, and I had a JVC, it had a little night shot, not like we have now. And we sat in the room, and I saw dust, and they're like, "Oh, look, there's one." And I was telling them that, listen, I'm of different languages on dust orbs with, bugs, dust, moisture, whatever it might have been. Could be a lip from your hair. I don't know. A butt hair. Who knows? Right? Who knows? So at one point I did say, I go, well, if a couple of you are really spirits, this is where it got weird for me. Could you come out of the closet? Could you circle Steve twice and land in his left hand? And we watch, nothing for a couple seconds, and I'll be damned. Comes out of the closet, goes around him, goes around his head, and settles down on his left hand, and then goes into his hand. He didn't feel a thing. I didn't let on that I'm seeing this on the monitor, because I had a monitor on top of the VHS recorder, and I still have that footage. And I'm like, okay, that is interesting to me. And so they then admitted when we were leaving the next day that they were all practicing Wiccans, which doesn't bother me. My daughter's a Wiccan. I got friends. Whether I put some belief in it or not is beside the point. It doesn't bother me. Okay. I didn't think that had anything to do, but then they started telling me about, you know, doing EVP sessions or doing, the candle lit, type of seance. And I told them, well, even when I open this up, sometimes I'm not prepared for what I think kind of comes through to communicate, you know, and I think something bad has always been there. I could tell that. I don't think you guys did anything to bring anything in here. It's always been here. And I asked him again, how long have you lived here? He goes, well, I've only been renting this place for after he moved in. So there's that. So what I feel that I encountered, and I don't do removal or any of that, I felt that I had come up against something dark that was there, and it didn't feel good. I don't think it was demonic. I'm not telling anybody that because I don't think it was. I think I really of a mind that I think there's some entities out there, maybe parallel or otherwise. Doesn't mean that my word means crap to anybody, but I think that is maybe a possibility too. And then when I came back for a revisit, he got the key from the landlord to go in that back apartment, and everything was left, and it was covered in cobwebs. Here's this guy's Western Michigan University books. It was creepy McCreeper. Like he just left everything. There was food on the table, still on the plate. Like he just walked. Because he's in the bay there in Saugatuck, Michigan. I know you're not from here. I don't know if you know what it looks like.
Yeah,
Brandon might know. So my perception is a lot of people in that area that unalive themselves, they go in the bay there, they swim and drown themselves. So he just up and left. So I go in the basement. We find a basement door that we didn't know was there. I know this is long, but trust me, it bears out to something really weird in this house. And there's so much dirt on the steps that you have to sweep the corners for you to be able to put your foot down. So we crept down. As we got to the bottom, same thing. It's like the Herman Munster mansion. It's just full of cobwebs, and doesn't bother me. I see tons of dead spiders, where they crystallize and all that stuff, and they've been in there for years. Excuse me. And so I looked to the left, and they had a shelf full of all these canned peaches and tomatoes, which started looking like some really horrific horror movie experiments. And I looked over to my right, and there's a basement window, and I look, and it's full of dust, but on the right side part of the window, it's freshly been wiped in a circle. It's clean. I know, right? I see your look. So to get to this, I have to go through all these cobwebs, and I disturbed the dust on the floor. So now you're seeing my tennis shoe footprints, and I'm covered, and I mean covered in this stuff. And what's funny is there's a bench just below it. It's called a lover's bench, where they're in opposite directions. So you would sit on one side, he would sit on, your backs are to each other, and then you can lean over and kiss each other. And that's what they called it. And as I get closer to the window, as I get up on my tiptoes and look out the window, it's of the bungalow that's next door. And it's a small window. And I see this lady, and she's undressing. It's in her bathroom. She's undressing. And I'm like, okay. So I get down. My wife's behind me. I go, take a look. And he's like, oh no. Oh no. And I go, yeah. So I know it wasn't him, who owns the place, because he would have disturbed all this stuff. And then I saw a handprint in the window. I have this picture that I show at my tour too. And I'm like, what in the hell's going on in your house, Steve? I think you got a pervert spirit, is it connected? I don't know. We didn't really do a follow-up because he had drama and he moved out of the house. But that was like one of my first cases. But I will tell you, I think that's one of the first times I felt that I came up against something that did feel it was negative. It was negative. So, I don't know. But there's been a couple others since, but just, I don't know. That just weirded me out. Still does. Still weirds me out. So now we know that ghosts are perverts too. So I guess
Yep.
I'm not going to hell alone, I guess. So it's all good.
I like your approach where you don't want to call them demonic or anything
I
like that.
won't.
I'm the
Nope.
same way. I won't because I don't want to give it power in my life.
Nope.
Yeah.
That's how I feel too.
Mhm. So I think that's great. Brenda, do you have a question?
No, I was just gonna say on the shadow ones, I've definitely had a few experiences with that as well. Like I had as my childhood seeing one open the door and stare through the doorway. And one of my cases, the only one I really felt like was at least something dark that I felt was actually something there is there one of our team members had seen like a shadow figure waving at them. And the girl's like, "Oh, you can see that too," because the girl could see it, and he could. But that was kind of one of the interesting things with
Wow.
that.
See, you said you don't get rid of them, which I do. I don't like them to stick around where they don't need to be. Is there a reasoning behind that?
Yes and no. Um, and I speak plainly and honestly. So again, I guess if it, for me, if I were to try to, because I'm also, I don't know. I think I don't have to be careful about answering this. You see my struggle. I really don't. I'm just going to be very honest. Like, let's say if I tried to move something on with a prayer into the light, where am I really sending them? You know, the other thing is I believe in I'm powerful. I don't give them power. I think if I'm going to just say it, I feel that I am a soldier of God. I don't know if God's a him, her, it, they, them, whatever it is, man. I just tell people that there's obviously a higher power. I could almost get guru into this. I just told my kids, hey, it's the chicken and the egg for me, baby. I don't know which came first. They can't answer it. It's a vicious circle. We were not going to know until it's our time to cross that veil and to see if we continue to live different lives each time we go. I don't know, but I put that in perspective. But I also know people who do that, and they have a little more fortitude and I think belief in their faith in order to project that and to commit that level. Now I have come across uh, what I think are spirits, Tanya, that seem lost or something, and I'm happy to say, yeah, you see a light. I'm happy to do that, but something negative, that's my explanation. I know it seems like a cop out. I'm not afraid to. Don't get me wrong. I could do it with the best of them, and I'm a pastor too, so I can marry, bury, whatever you want me to do. I wear a lot of different hats. Unlike some of the people, I actually had been studying the theology, and I paid for it online, like some other people too. I'm honest about that too, but I'll never put that in front of my title. But I feel I'm in touch because I come from a long line in my family of pastors. My great grandfather. It's just weirdness, but I know I'm skating around certain things. I just didn't want to. It just seemed like it was too much for me to get involved in. I don't know if you guys consider that cowardly or not. I don't think I'm a coward because I go in where the group is afraid to, and I fear what's walking around out here more than I do anything even on that side. I just want to be sure that I'd be doing the right thing. I guess that's my answer. I just would like to know that I'm doing the right thing, and I don't think I have enough experience, even as long as I've been at this, or maybe I haven't been trained by the right person to do that. I guess is my answer. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, I've worked with a lot of investigators. Everybody's kind of got their own
Yeah.
kind of beliefs on that.
Yeah, because I'm not just ghost chasing. I honestly, I'm trying to find some answers for myself. And I set out, I think earlier, that I just wanted everybody to believe, but now I could care less. I just get what I get. And if we go through all the process that we cannot explain it within means, here, look at it. You can decide whether you think I'm full of poop as the next person, or you can just look at that and go, whoa. That's your decision.
I think it's a healthy standpoint if you don't feel like that's for you, because I will agree. I think it does take a very strong belief and faith in something stronger than all of us, more
Right.
powerful than all of us.
Yeah, now not to say, and I bet you've had this too. I was going to ask you this, Tanya. In regards to that, though, I've had two different reoccurring dreams, and I still have them every couple of years, and it's the same house, it's the same spirit. I'm picked up, moved around, I'm pushed down. I feel it in my sleep. That's heavy, and I feel a little fear at the same time, which I think is natural with anybody. I want to tell anybody out there, if you feel that, it's okay. It's natural. And the thing of it is, I still face it down because that's what I'm there to do. And I do not give it power to scare me the next time I know I'm having that same dream. Isn't that weird? I don't let it affect me where, hey, I'm still coming in this time. I'm still coming in this time. And I get a little further into the house each time. It's weird.
It's funny because I used to have a dream sort of like that when I was young, but mine was a little bit more way fictitious than I knew it couldn't happen because in the dream skeletons were running after me and that's it could happen.
Oh, Lord. No,
But
I don't see what it is. It just seems to be like you've encountered like an entity in this house, and it was going to do what it was to get me out. And I'm like, it's not going to happen. And I'm that way. I'm that way on the real realm too. It's like, you're not going to chase me out of here. Let's just see where we're at. And if I gotta, because one of my friends who I love dearly, Rob Conover, passed away a couple years ago, and he was on A&E Travel Channel, and he wasn't doing it just to get on TV. I asked him in on a case in Grand Rapids, and he was the real deal. I saw something I cannot explain. There were smells and things, and I didn't tell him anything about the case other than I need your help because we need this figured out. And he moved this little boy on, and then when it was all over, and I sat in the room with him, just me and him, he told me it was a little boy, and that he'd been asked to wait for his parents. Now the little boy had grown up to be an adult, but then when he passed on, he knew that he didn't wait for his parents, and he came back as a smaller child, and he was stuck because where that apartment complex was built, and other people were having stuff in this apartment. We talked to several people. Um, there was a family farm. We found out who they were. Once I gave out to all to Rob afterwards, I mean, he hit everything without even knowing. Without even knowing, drove all the way from Pekin, Illinois. So I missed that guy, but that's what I meant. You know, this is what he did. He was happy to do this. He was a retired Marine, a retired police detective, and loved God, and like a lot of us do, or you don't, whatever you love, I'm cool. It just he was committed. He was certainly committed, but strange stuff.
I mean, I'm one of those that because of gifts and with anybody with sensitivity, I love the ones that are like me that go in, do it for the love or the help and not know what's going on. I
Right.
think it helps to solidify the team's evidence. I mean, what would you say about that?
No, I've done that on occasion too, where I say, hey, on this one, we're not going to do the research. I mean, I know the address, I know, I know where we're going, but I said, we're going to do this, post-war, I guess, if you want to put it. So we're going to go in here, do it a couple times. Then we're going to look into who lived here before, when was the, place or the house built. This is how I do it. So yeah, we do that. And then we get to, hey, well, who was there? Who was on the land first? Were there, and I do this too, were there Native Americans involved anywhere nearby? Is there water, underground water? I look at geography. I really do. I get out geographical maps. I got one sitting back here that we're checking right now on a case out here near Kalamazoo. And I look at that too, and I take again in consideration what a lot of that stuff, according to us in the paranormal now, after what is it now from the British Society of Paranormal Study, we're talking, what is it now, 70, 80 years from the grandfather of modern ghost hunting, who some of the methods we still use. So some of the people were doing that back then, and I continue to do that now because I believe, and I get in debates and sometimes arguments with paranormal people all the time, that weather is also correlated, so is geography, and so is spatial lineups. If you're into the universe, doesn't make you a wacko. It's just that we know that in the winter, when I've done cases, and I got a filing cabinet that's 4 foot tall, full of these cases, that I have weather conditions written down, and I even go back and look at those every so often, because we compare those to something now that we're working on in Bloomingdale, Michigan. And what I found was it's winter, and in winter we are pelted very highly with the Van Allen radiation belt, which, if anybody knows how that works, when it's pelting the earth, we're switched on the axis slightly, which means that we're getting more of that radiation, and that radiation bombards positive and negative ions. And if you're going to go into the ionic study, I know I'm getting crazy here. If you get into the study of that compared to what we think in theory towards paranormal, hello, if you think they draw energy, again, there it is. And I have a lot of stuff that happens in winter and fall for me, more than I think it does sometimes in spring, July, in summer months. I mean, I still get stuff, but it ramps up like crazy, especially, different locations that I know. So I would offer that up and say that that's a big part of what I do with this too, is sometimes I go in blind, and then I find out afterwards. I'm amazed at some of the things I find out. We did a couple places in Howell, Michigan, when I was doing tours out there, and it was crazy. One had a famous murder, which I never knew about. I never knew a thing. I thought it was a Chinese restaurant, and then the famous people that were involved in the town and some other things, let alone a ghost train. Believe it or not, I used to laugh at that, from the Ghostbuster movie, about a spectral train. And I had a run-in with one. I and Manny Hernandez, who's still a friend and comes out with the group. And I just tell you that it just amazes me, like, after energy, residual, and when you're dealing with, what I consider intelligent haunting. And I don't think sometimes we're even talking to ghosts, if I'm going to be honest. So think about that. I tell
I
everybody.
agree with you on that one. I agree
Yeah.
that it's not always ghosts. I think sometimes I try to keep everything open. I think sometimes we could actually be communicating with ourselves, maybe
Yeah.
like after we pass. I think sometimes we might be dealing with kind of, at least what I call like the elemental or the fairy realm. Because I've definitely had cases where I've come across that type of evidence, where I've seen stuff that I
Yep.
don't believe is human, or stuff that's, interdimensional, or possibly there's other dimensions that overlay, which even like physics and stuff, like a lot of that, like Einstein, or, like a lot of them had it where there may be multiple dimensions overlapping each other. So maybe we're communicating with somebody in another dimension.
You and I got to sit and have a beer when you're down here. All right. We got to talk more, because
Yeah.
we are of a like mind. I give
Yeah.
that lecture. I give that in the lecture too. I get a lot of deer in the headlights, but I tell them shortly, it's like, hey man, through the super collider alone, they've proven time travel. They've also showed that there's possibly parallel existence. They saw it happen. I don't know the specifics, but this is what I read. I believe in that, and you're right, Brandon. I think that there's times that it might be 2023 here, but then if I'm at a site that has something famous in 1921, I might be talking to somebody in 1921 in that parallel existence, because their wall is thinner than ours, and for some reason they're always observing us, but we can't see them. That might even be what a lot of the shadow people talk is about, or what it's about. I think they get too much of a bad name, because I think in sense of staring at you or standing at the end of your bed, it gives it kind of a negative connotation. But I think that's misidentified too. I really believe it is. But you're right, man. I don't think it's always ghosts. I'm not going into the UFO and Bigfoot stuff. That's way too far out there for me, even though I do believe in those too. But you know what I mean? Some people go off the deep end.
Yeah.
I would agree with you on the weather aspect. I mean, the facility that I've got in my background, I investigated it first time ever in March, and I had a gentleman tell me, when I was using my digital pictures or digital camera for the first time, red pictures always come back in March, always in the colder month of March.
Mhm.
And they still cannot figure out. And I think it has everything to do with the anger, the frustration of the inmates, because that facility wasn't well heated and it was cold, and they were not happy because they were constantly freezing, and it shows in those pictures because it's always in the coldness of March.
Yeah.
So I do believe with that same thing, weather has a huge impact. And a lot of times I don't know if you believe this, but I believe like we get a lot of, I personally believe in certain environments. We get more
Mhm.
activity in the colder months too,
Yeah,
because there's energy, the energy is constantly inside to kind of feed that. Does that make sense?
it does. That's what I was alluding to. You know, the inside we get a lot of activity, and I'm one of the nuts, and you'll hear it here on the show that I'm out in the snow up to my damn knees, which that's just me. I probably won't do it so much now, but we were doing that, and we were working some cemeteries that people said in winter they were seeing things, and I got some of my best EVPs in cold weather and during a storm. You can hear with the right kind of mic, recorder, or I use, the microphone spit guards and the sponges on these to cut down wind. But you can hear that, but they're clear as a bell. So you're right. I think that happens too. And as I said, I don't think any of us are too far off with any theory that we're kind of putting into play. My good friend who's passed away, Jason Sullivan, used to do a series called Midwest Haunts 101. You can still go and find them on YouTube. I suggest experienced people watch them, new people watch them. Jason knew very early on about some of that stuff we're talking about tonight. And, theory was a big thing he was always about. And don't, come up with your own theory because you could, I think there's a joke that goes, you could read the ingredients on a chewing gum wrapper and by accident suddenly uncover the secrets of the universe. And so by your own theory, you might come up with something else that may work and it'll be proven out that it works. And it's another way to do something or another way to collect evidence. And I'm not talking about crazy, just out of the world stuff, but you never know. Because I have heard from divers. Brandon, Tanya, I want to tell you this. I'm friends with a person that dives shipwrecks here in Lake Michigan. She's been on Destination with Josh. Do you guys know who that is? Valerie Van
Yeah.
Heest.
Love him. He's
Okay.
so great.
Yeah, I knew her. I interviewed her a long time ago about flight, 2501. And so she told me herself, she goes, I want to hear all this ghost stuff. So she put me in touch with somebody else that I had on the show who's all about the Michigan Triangle and some different people. And when I talked to him, and he dives on stuff here in the Great, still does, and he's done stuff in the ocean. He's like, I am down on this wreck that all hands died on this wreck. He'll tell me certain names, and we are hearing people talking. We are hearing music, and he's seen things on decks of these ships that he can't explain. And it's almost like shadow movement, like somebody's in the wheelhouse, but he knows it's not fish. You know what I mean? And I found that very interesting because I had asked a long time ago, can if we're spirit, can we haunt our own shipwrecks? And when they did that film, The Ghost of the Titanic, which I know is just a made up thing, I was just so in love with that because you see all those shoes and stuff laying at the bottom where people came to rest and different things on board the ship. I just had to wonder as a paranormal guy. I mean, are you stuck there because of that incident? Is that where you're at? And you're down there and everything's up above because I don't know if I necessarily believe that ghosts can travel everywhere either. I don't know. That's a whole nother show. I'm sorry. I told you I could talk.
That's
Yeah.
great. But I kind of agree with you on that. But my philosophy is if anything happens down there, a lot of times I feel like it's residual because it has free flowing energy to continually be there.
Yeah,
Almost.
especially with properties in water. You're right. Yeah. Yeah. Who knows?
Because with the shipwrecks, I mean, you're underwater, that water's going to constantly be moving.
Yep. And this is why I don't like to swim in Lake Michigan or any deep water because as a sensitive too, I'll say it outright. There's times it's not like I feel like it's like a horror movie, like they're like, oh, like they're reaching out to touch me or grab my legs. But I feel so many because there's been thousands of people lost in these lakes. And out here at Lake Michigan, I'm just like, there's days I can't go in the water up to here because I feel them I don't know how else to put it to anybody, and I don't want to be out there. I'm okay at my knees. You know, I'm okay if I'm in a floaty, but even I said there's days I don't even want to do that because I feel stupid because I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I'm so sensitive to it. I don't want, you know what I mean? I don't want the connection.
I know how you feel it.
Uh,
When I took
it
my
jeeves
girls
me out.
to the golf, and they were like, "Oh, let's swim out further," and I was like, mm-mm.
Mm-mm.
I could not swim past where I couldn't touch, and I was like, "No, I'm good where I can. My feet have to touch the ground because I feel that
Yeah.
same overwhelming sensation, like something's going to come up and
Mhm.
try to get my attention. Not so much pull me under, but get my attention.
Yep. Yep.
Like if I feel ground, I feel like nothing's gonna try to get my attention. So
That's me too. That's
Well, it's
funny.
like the
That's
whole
me
thing.
too.
You're staying grounded because your feet are on the ground. Whereas if you're past that, you no longer have that grounding point. And that's like a big
Yeah.
thing in the spiritual thing too, is like sometimes like I've been inside where I've had to go out and go out of a location and go out and ground myself on the grass. But like if you're out in the water and you're not able to ground yourself to the ground, I can definitely see that.
Yeah. And I can go out on ships and boats. I'm good. You know,
Yeah.
and my wife will jump off because I went out with them one time and everybody's, hey, jump in, Dan, take a swim. And I'm like, Tanya, it's like, oh no, 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 no. So I can't see the bottom. I don't want to go in. The other thing is I do have that insane, I guess I'm psychotic when it comes to that. I have this insane fear that, oh, now we find the Lake Michigan monster because Dan disappeared. We saw this thing come up and get him. And there are reports every year. I know you know this, Brandon, because you live here. Guys will dive in off a boat completely sober and they never come back up.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the hell? So I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. You guys
Yeah.
have fun.
Yeah.
Have fun with that. Now, if it goes down, then I'll be swimming to shore, but I'm
Yeah.
not doing that. But I've heard of airplanes being haunted and all sorts of stuff. I got to work a haunted car that was involved in a mob hit, but I'm trying to save that for a book before I openly talk about it.
Okay. We'll have to check out the book.
It'll be a
Whenever it
while.
comes out,
Yeah,
let
it'd be
us
a
know.
while.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Yeah, first we didn't think it was real, but we found out. Yeah, yeah. So kind of strange.
Yeah. I do want to talk about Henderson Castle, though. I've been there
Yes, sir.
once. I can't investigate it. Basically, I
Yeah.
walked in because I thought it was like a ghost event. It wasn't something you were, but it was actually more like a haunted house where people jump out and scare you, kind of a thing. So I didn't end up going and doing it because I was misinformed on what it was. But that's definitely a
Was
very cool, very beautiful building. But if you want to talk
was
something, I know you do a lot of events
well,
there.
was I there in a Ghostbuster suit?
I don't think so. I didn't really go around there just because once I
Yeah,
figured
because
out it wasn't actually, I'm into the real ghost stuff, not into the people jumping out at you thing.
yeah, because anything he's done like that, I haven't been there.
Yeah.
I've been at 2 Halloween things, but that's my Ghostbuster thing, you know I do.
Yeah.
So that was something different. We're there for the kids, whatever,
Yeah.
have a good time. But yeah, if you come to mine, it's I host haunted dinner tours, and you know, I just read some reviews the other day. There's people who have nasty things to say. Not so much about the tours, but you know, they're like, well, I've been there. I was there. It's not haunted. Well, you stayed one night, so okay, whatever. 17 years I've been doing that, and prior owner and with Francois, and I've seen some things I can't explain. I've heard a lot that I've recorded that I can't explain. And there, like I said, there are people that early on, I think off air, I said there's people that come in from across the street because Mountain Home Cemetery is literally across the street there. It's right there. And I love doing it. And I tell everybody it's positive activity. I think Frank and Mary are very welcoming people. I think I've encountered Frank there more than I do Mary, which is understandable. I think he's very protective of her. You know, if you don't know the history, you can, I mean, Wikipedia gives a roundabout version of who they were, but I know that I have some information that I use in the lecture that's from a family member. So the personal side of these people is very precious, and it's kind of beautiful the way they were and how they thought. You know, they were ahead of their time. They were about people in the community. Even though they had money, he was a self-made man. He would work at places, apprentice in, and then buy them out. So he understood rather quickly, if I got 7 businesses doing trunks, clothes, and whatever else, I got regular income coming in. And in the day of commodities in the 1860, nines and 70s and 80s, you took off. He was friends with the Gilmores. He was also friends with the Upjohns. So he knew a lot of people, the Birch family. I'm naming a lot of names here who are known in Kalamazoo, but he had connections. And I think they were just beautiful people. And the daughters have a history too. They were never little girls when they were in the house. They were preteens to adults. One got married in the house. As far as deaths go, I do believe that Frank and Mary are the two that I can correlate with death certificates. They both died in the house. He had an what they called what do they call it? Apoplexy, which is a stroke. And he had 2 of them and it killed him. And then she had stomach cancer, which is very painful. I can only imagine. And she passed away in 1908, I believe. And he died in 1890. 1890. Get it right, Dan. 1899, because it was like 3 or 4 years after living in the house. So it's a beautiful place. I tell people, if you go to stay there, and Brandon, you've been there, it's an 1895 bed and breakfast. Don't come there thinking you're going to get the Hilton. Okay. You're not. There's some things that it is what it is. But I love the place, and it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, that kind of drives me nuts is when people go to some place that has paranormal activity and then they come out and go, well, I didn't experience anything. It's not haunted.
Yeah.
Just one of many reasons could have been. It could have been that they didn't like you, or you're not sensitive enough, or it just wasn't meant to be. I always like to tell people, don't go in expecting this massive paranormal experience, because you can walk out, because I've even experienced it, and I know you probably have gone into some place that is notoriously haunted and walked out and go, well, I didn't experience anything.
Yeah, but I don't berate it and tell everybody. It's just like, hey, just because I'm there doesn't mean they want to come out and play. You're right. You're right. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes they don't. I think there's times where they have there's down moments in this too, that you can go by months. I know it's happened there where he hasn't really had much go on, but I'll tell you, the day that he put a Michael Phelps swimming pool and hot tub in Frank and Mary's backyard on the side of the castle, he called me up that night, and I saw it on Facebook, and I went, oh. And I was right. And he said, hey, some bad things started to happen. They had a water leak for no reason. Some weird stuff. He even had somebody like physically attack him over something, over their stay or something. He's never had that happen. And he said, something's off. And so I went there with a ghost box. I used one of those. And I said, well, we'll see if we can get Frank to say hello or maybe talk to him. I had my son-in-law with me because he kind of grew up with us in the group, and he's married my daughter now, which is cool. So we talked to Frank. I think we heard from him, and I told Francois, just tell him out loud why you're doing this. One businessman to another, man, just tell him. And he did. And he said, I love your house. I know I'm doing a really bad French accent, but he loves it when I do him. He goes, I love their house, and we're just trying to bring more people in to have more money and more things for the house. So I had to put in the pool, And he said the next day, it just seemed like the energy changed. And I did ask on the box, does that, is that okay, Frank? Does that make sense to you? I try not to ask big carried on questions. And I think we heard yes. I said, thanks for talking to us. We always get a welcome. I'm amazed. And he said it changed. So I think that happens too. And I have yet to be in that pool, which I need to, because, my legs, get in there and check that out. But it's just an amazing place. So I tell everybody, go to hendersoncastle.com. They support my network and my podcast, and they do wonderful things. And if you want to come to Kalamazoo, stay there and see what happens. You can stay the night. you're allowed to wander around as long as you're not disturbing other guests and do your little ghost hunting. Don't get strange and start knocking stuff over. Just, be cool, and see what you get. Because I know other groups that maybe a few, we hear probably people. I know they're in Michigan and they've come down and spent the night, and then I see it on their YouTube or on TikTok. And I think it's cool that they get voices and people are talking to them. That says that whoever's there welcome them in, and I'm happy to have that jewel, in the grass, that little rough diamond in the grass type of thing, to do here in Kalamazoo. It's a lot of fun, and I protect it with a lot of vivaciousness because I love that place. I grew up, I don't know if you knew this, Brandon, but I grew up 3 blocks west of that house. So I used to play on that hill when I was a kid.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's cool.
Well, I love it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get, because where I don't call it my hometown, but where I graduated high school from, the city, like the residents have we have a castle that the residents feel protective of, and we kind of like see it as kind of that crowning jewel to the city
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
thing. I get it with the castle. It's great that you have that rapport, and Frank is comfortable with you.
I'm glad too, because I talk to him a lot before we do the tour. It's like, hey, I'm here tonight. If you want to talk, that's fine. And I know there's going to be people going through the house, but I think he's come to understand this is what happens with it now. And I think what I get from that is intelligent response. Mary, when I think when she gets tired of everybody certain hours, I've only heard her say this to me once, is that I said, Mary, are you here with us tonight? And on my video camera, I caught this, that she said in a whispered, I heard, yes, I'm here. There's a pause and it's time to leave. So I called everybody in the group. It's time to go, man. We're done. Let's give her space, And I don't think they're there all the time. And I know I'm taking a lot of liberty with saying that they're there and they're this and that, but that's what I believe because I've encountered the same voice. I know the same voices. And I know when we've encountered other people there too, that don't seem familiar to me. But I will tell you, Tanya, I wish you could come out sometime. I can't promise they're going to do this for you if you came out, you too, Brandon. But we had a family birthday there. They booked the tour for 55 members of the family. And I asked in a session before we shut it down, I turned the lights down just to kind of make it creepy for them. Spooky, not creepy, spooky. And I said, could you tell me what's in the middle of the table? And a woman's voice came over, and it didn't sound like Mary, but she said a cake. And everybody gasped because they thought they're looking around like I got somebody on a walkie-talkie or something. And I showed them like, oh, no. And I said, well, can you tell me what color that cake is? And sometimes I was going to ask you this, Tanya, Brandon too, both of you. So when you ask colors, sometimes they get it just slightly off. Like it's red, but they'll say pink.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know what their spectrum is, right? Just
well,
wondering.
even people though, they have based on like the cones that you have in your eyes, and people have different
Right.
setting cones in their eyes. You can see colors differently.
Yes.
So they might be seeing it. Of course, they don't have cones now, but I don't know what their spirit body is like. But that could be very well why they're seeing things a different color.
Yeah.
Some people have like 4 cones. Some people have only 2, and most people have 3 types of cones in their eyes. So it's that can definitely cause the colors for them to be seeing it differently.
No.
Or they might be seeing it just from that spectrum.
That's good. That's what I'm thinking too. Yeah, I just thought, that's odd. I don't know what they're seeing, but they did get it right. They said red. And without me even asking, that voice of that lady came back on and said velvet. It was a red velvet cake. And that family was losing their mind. I'm just like, hey, welcome to the Henderson Castle and the paranormal. You are witnessing a very rare event because even with us going out with our groups, we don't get stuff like that all the time. And I just thought, well, damn, maybe I should just do a tour and investigation every time people are here. I didn't know what to make of it. So I'm lucky with that sometimes, you know.
The opinions expressed in the preceding program are those of the producer and not necessarily those of WKTV Community Media.